This sub box that I'm building is going to be going into my 1994 Mazda RX-7. It's got to fit a JL 8-inch version 3 sub and a JL 250 watt amp. And I've had these already. They've been installed in the car for several years in a pre-built, prefabbed JL box. But it took up a lot of trunk space. It would sit in the back and it could slide around, and the trunk space on the RX-7 is pretty small. So I wanted to build something that fit better and gave me more room. And this is what I came up with. It's made of 3/4 inch MDF wood from Lowe's. It's probably a little overkill for an 8-inch sub. It adds some weight to it. You could probably get by with 1/2 inch, but we didn't have 1/2 inch, and I think it would be a little trickier if you're trying to put like a screw through and to get it to go into the 1/2 inch versus 3/4. So you have a little more wiggle room this way. But I started with some instructions that I found online. Someone had built a similar box. They called it the Damon B box, and he shared his dimensions. And I started with that, and I had to tweak a few things. And I'll talk about that a little more when I show it in the car. And then on the back here, so the 8-inch sub obviously goes here, and it pokes through quite a bit. I originally envisioned putting the amp right on the back and having this go all the way across, centering the sub, but because it poked through so far, this had to be deeper than I wanted, and when you put the amp on the end of it, it sticks out quite a bit. So if we were to put this right here, it sticks out quite a bit, and it causes this to go into the trunk more than I wanted. So by offsetting it and putting the sub over to this side and recessing the amp a little, I was able to conserve space. Yes, the sub won't be centered, but it should be fine over on the side. On my 3000 GT, my subwoofer's on the back driver's side, and it sounds just as good as my Subaru that has a centered sub. So I'm able to recess that. A little bit of a tight fit to get it in there, but it shares the same angle, and that'll give me more room. And if you followed my other build thread, you'll know that there's 2 cubbies behind the seats, and on the passenger side cubby is where I have a battery. So the battery's literally got to go from the cubby and have like 2 feet of power and ground wire that go to my amp right here. And this panel is removable right now, but it will be screwed in there. And I guess I technically have a little hidden compartment back here if I wanted. I am a little concerned about heat, but I posted online and other people said that they've ran similar setups and they don't have any issues. This is a small class D amp, so it doesn't put off a whole lot of heat. But what I was thinking, if I did run into problems, I could drill some more holes in here, and then maybe drill some holes here and do some kind of grill over here. That'll kind of help it not look so off-centered, or the sub on one side. It would help balance it out. Here are the dimensions that I used, and these were the Damon B dimensions that I ended up tweaking. I'll put a link to his thread on RX-7 Club, but his thread called for a 10-inch box, and I originally started with that, and it was too tall. It wouldn't fit under my strut bar. Maybe if I removed all the carpet under it and put some washers under the strut bar, it would fit. But I'm not quite sure how he got away with a 10-inch because I certainly couldn't. So here's the front. So it's just 27.5 up here, 30 inches on the bottom. This is 9 1/8 inches tall. So I don't exactly know what these angles are. You could calculate them, but I just find the center of the board, draw your center line down, and then measure out in both directions, and then these angles kind of work themselves out. Here's the top, and it's 25.5 inches wide, and I say approximately 5 inches over here, and that's because this top board is got to be beveled. You have to do some bevel cuts so it'll match this angle. So when I say approximately 5 inches, that's what it approximately is. When I make these cuts, initially I would cut the board to be 25.5 by about 6 inches or 6 1/4, and then just worry about the angles later. Just cut it a little bit bigger. Same with the bottom. It's going to be the same length, obviously. And I say approximately 7 inches, so cut it 8 inches. Just because, again, you're going to be dealing with a beveled cut on the bottom. If I flip this over, here you'd be dealing with that same beveled cut to match this angle. And then here's the sides. So these you can cut as is, so 4.75 inches on the top, 7 inches on the bottom, 9 1/8 inch tall. Then you draw your line. I don't know what these angles are, but it works itself out. And then once you have these two sides, you can use these to set your table saw. So if you come over here and you were to flip one of those sides upside down and adjust your blade, you'd get your blade to match that angle. And I guess it does look like it is 13.5 degrees, give or take. But that's basically all I did to get it to match the angle. And you're not gonna get it right on the first cut. So I would cut it a little bigger, and then I would come over to my box and I would hold the piece up, and as it's sticking out too far, I'd take it back to the table saw, I'd move the adjustment over just a little and cut it again until I got it to match exactly. Just take a little bit off and send it through 3 or 4 times to get it perfect versus trying to do it in one cut, because when you're dealing with angles, it's a little tricky and you don't want to accidentally cut it too short and then have to start over. So that's how I did all of the angle cuts, just make it a little bigger. And then for the middle piece is basically got to match this piece, but it's not going to be as tall, and these numbers are going to be a little less. So the height is basically your 9 1/8 minus 1.5 inches, because the center piece, you can see in there, it doesn't go to the very bottom of the box like this one, it goes to the top of this. So you got the thickness of the MDF to account for twice. So 3/4 and 3/4 is your 1.5 inches, and that will slide in there to give you support. And part of the reason I did this versus sending this board over here, if you forget about recessing the amp, is you have to take airspace calculations in for a sealed box. And this subwoofer calls for 0.3 cubic feet of airspace. So that's what this chamber over here works out to be with these dimensions. And if your sub calls for something a little different, you can calculate it, and you could probably make this board and the bottom board a little deeper if you needed more airspace, or a little shallower if you needed less airspace. So that's the middle. And I didn't mention this cut because the back could be different, but basically when I started building this box, I put the side piece together with the top and the bottom and this side, so I had an open window, and then I worried about mounting the face to it. And then once I had it like that, I flipped it up. I put the center piece in when it was just like this, and then I added this board. Again, this also has 2 angled cuts. So just send it down the table saw on one end, and then it'll overhang on the other, and then mess with the width until you're matching the right angle, and just send it through again and again and again until you get it so it looks perfect. And the angle of the table saw, you're gonna set it once. That same angle that you set it to is gonna be able to do all of these cuts. So I set that once, and I didn't have to worry about it. Again, it was always the same angle. So here's the 3/4 inch MDF, and you're gonna see another sub box on top of it. I didn't want to start messing around with the MDF until I knew I had everything right and I was happy with fitment. So this is just some 1/2 inch plywood that I had laying around, and you can see I've tweaked it. I originally made it 1 inch taller like the Damon B, and it was too tall, and then I had to cut it down, and because I cut it down, this board right here wasn't wide enough, but I didn't want to cut a new one, so that's why you got this gap right here. And this is just tacked together with some finish nails, so I can easily pry it apart if I need to. But I monkeyed around with this box. I had the sub mounted in it, you can see. and it even has this kind of same setup right here. So find something, test fit it, make it work. You can see I had to notch out right here for the amp because it would block off the power wires going through. So this is kind of crude, but it served its purpose. This was a full sheet of MDF from Lowe's. Current prices were around, I think, $49. And I measured it, it's like 5 feet 4 inches left. So if you use like 3 feet of it or so is all you need, you could probably build, or you can easily build 2 sub boxes. You may be able to get away with building 3 of them, because you can see I have some scrap pieces over there that I didn't end up using. So this shows how it's going to look in the car. It slides right under that strut bar. Underneath this factory carpet is some pretty thick foam, so it can squish down some, so you do have to push down on it just slightly to get it under there. You can kind of see it flex as I do that. But it doesn't put any pressure on these plastic things that the hatch cover snaps onto. But it gives me a whole bunch more trunk space, which I like. And I'll show you what it looks like from the inside. So this is the inside, and normally I'm going to run that cover, and that's kind of what I was concerned about with heat. Am I closing in my amp? But people said that they've done similar stuff and it's been fine, so hopefully this will be fine. Worst case, I'll do some kind of vent holes in the back or maybe do a little fan, but I'm going to try it as is for now. So the cover will fit over there. I'll show you how it looks from the other side. And you can see that notch I was talking about. That way the wire can go right up into here. This is where I have my battery. So it's pretty clean. It'll be hidden with that cover and gives me trunk space. Here's the carpet folded up, and you can see that big foam piece that I'm talking about that's under there. And you can see what the floorboard looks like. So if you were to measure, tape measure right here, from kind of this high spot up until the bottom of that hanger bracket, it's about 10 and 3/8 inches. So the Damon B box, I guess you could potentially slide it under there if you remove this foam and made it flatter. These studs stick up right here, and that's where my box also wanted to hit, that first one I made out of plywood. So you may have to cut off the top of these studs. But I'm using an 8-inch box, so it doesn't concern me to make it a little smaller. And if this foam does pack down and I get like a gap here, what I'll probably do is take a strip of wood and wrap it in carpet and put it on the top of the box and kind of wedge it between the box and the lower half of this strut bar. That's actually how I have my Subaru subwoofer in there. It's like 1/2 inch shorter than the strut bar, so I put a little wedge in there and that keeps it held in place. I've also read that people take these caps off and take the strut bar off, and you can put a washer or 2 under the strut bar to raise it and to give you more room. You can kind of see that there's a space between the top of this and the underside of this. There's a piece of foam in there. So it looks like you could move the bar up maybe a quarter of an inch at most if you needed some more room there. And then the vanity cover that goes on top snaps into here, and it's going to need to fold up. And when it goes to fold up, it's going to want to hit that sub box. So I'm going to have to modify that. And I've got that over here. So this is what it looks like. This is that lip that's going to want to hit. So I'm going to have to come in and cut the front of this off a little bit so that when the hatch opens and this wants to raise up and this bends down, it's not going to hit the sub box and not want to open. So I got the carpet installed on the box. It's probably the second sub box that I've ever carpeted, so not the greatest at it. Before I started, I added some sealer all around the edges in here, and I used a mirror to make sure I got the back edge just to seal it up real well. I just used some liquid nail that I had laying around. I put a little on my finger and just used that. I couldn't fit the caulking gun inside really to get all the angles, so just use your finger. For the adhesive for the carpet, I use this 3M Super 77 stuff from Lowe's. It's about $13 a can. And the carpet actually came from Crutchfield. It's the black, and it was $39 or $40 with free shipping, and it came with a ton of it. I could probably cover 5 or 6 of these boxes with the amount of carpet that it came with. So this is how it looks. I've got the amp in there. I still need to screw it on. Hindsight, I probably should have made the box just ever so slightly taller, just so I'd have some more room here. This is a pretty tight fit, but it does work. Here's the side where I added the inputs. These are just some cheap things off eBay. I forgot what the company is, but they come with a 2-pack, and I liked these because it's got this little plastic divider in here. A lot of the other ones just have the 2 prongs, and there's nothing to keep them from wanting to wobble one way or another. I figure this solid plastic divider or whatever would prevent them from ever coming loose or wanting to touch. So the top looks good, the front looks good. You can see I did some overlap on the sides because you're not going to see the sides very well, but you can do kind of a clean cut where you'd cut it and then you'd pull both sides back and you'd dig out the excess material underneath, and then you'd have two sides meeting in a seam. And I did that on the bottom. Let me pull this amp out. I'll show you what I mean. You also got to be very careful when spraying. That's why I put this paper down. You got to be careful about overspray on the paper too. If you get a little area that's tacky, you don't want to drag the sub box through it. But you can see this seam right here. I started with tucking this part underneath the sub box, and the first side that I sprayed was the front, so I just sprayed it on, and then I also sprayed it on the back side of the carpet. I let it get tacky for like a minute or two, and then I just spread it out with my hand, and then I flipped it. I let the excess kind of roll off here. I sprayed the top, I sprayed the back side of the carpet, let it get tacky, rolled it over, and I did that around the whole thing. And then I got to the bottom, so I sprayed this half, and I laid this side down, and it went over to like around here or so. And then this back side, I didn't spray it yet. I kind of just folded it over to see where it would be, and I let it overlap the other side. And then once I do that, I put a straight edge down, and then I made one cut with a fresh blade and my knife. This worked pretty well. And then flip the flap up, pull off that strip. You'll have 2 layers of fabric, and then both of them are going to want to meet right in the center, and you can kind of rub it with your fingers to make the line less visible. But this is the bottom, so I didn't spend too much time on it. I even had to make a little relief cut right here because this steps down. And then once you do that and you get to the edges, there's probably 100 different ways to do it. You could try to do kind of triangles. I just cut from the corner straight out on every single one, and I folded the top down about 2 inches, and I glued that down. I folded the bottom up about 2 inches. I glued that down, and then I kind of made this meet in the center. I don't mind having some extra material here. There's a plastic panel, and this will prevent it from wanting to rub, and it's not visible. You're not going to see this, and you're also going to have a strut bar that goes across the top of it. The only sides you're really going to see is the side in the trunk, and then maybe this side if you have the divider off. Dealing with this wood insert was a little trickier than I liked. I had to slice all the corners and come down at an angle to tuck it in. I was able to stretch stretch this around this part I cut. The material pulls pretty well, and it sticks when it's tacky. But I had to cut out some little scrap pieces to go there because you would have seen exposed wood. This insert here, I had to put it on the table saw again and take a little bit more material off this edge and this edge, just because when you have the carpet thickness here plus the carpet thickness here, it was too tight. So I had to take off like a blade width and a half from both ends. But overall, I'm happy with the way that it came out. I'm going to try it tomorrow. I'm just going to give it a full 24 hours for this liquid nail stuff to fully harden. So it's all installed. I just wanted to do a final walk around video. This is what it looks like in the trunk. Look at all that space I have. You can see right here, I took a little piece of MDF and I wrapped it in some carpet, and that's what I kind of wedged between the top of the box and this bar. That helps hold it down tight. It also takes some of the stress off of these plastic clips for that shade cover. I wouldn't want to break those. They're probably expensive and discontinued. I was going to do one across the whole top, but I realized that there's a seam there. So I'm thinking that if my amp is in here, it's not completely sealed tight. Any heat that's going to rise could come out here and it would help it. So I just sealed on the edges. Lots of trunk space. If we look at the cover, I did have to cut that ridge right there, and it left some cardboard-like material exposed, and I just took a black Sharpie to it. So we can take this, and I'll put it in right now. So it's installed. It's got these little rope hangers, and there, that's what it looks like. I could probably trim even a little more off. It's hanging right now and it's not touching, and I can even lift it up higher. It does want to bind about right there, but I don't think you really go through that movement very often. So let me walk around. Here's the inside, and I spent some time cleaning up the wiring. What's really cool is if you take these clips out and fold this back, there's like a 1/2 inch gap in there between the foam and the top of this ridge, and it's a perfect channel to run wiring. So this blue wire runs through that channel over to the other side, and you can kind of see it right there. That's where it goes to the sub. I poke this RCA out here, and I've got my power and ground, which just come right down to the battery. So very clean, very happy with the way it came out. I tried it, and it sounds great. So I'll let you know if I ever have any overheating issues in the comments, but I don't think it will. I just cranked it for a good 2-3 minutes, and it felt cool to the touch with the cover still on it, but that may change when I have it outside and it's 100 degrees out. But we'll see. Thanks for watching.